Okay, couple of announcements. One, my Discord is available now. It's still a work in progress, so it's pretty much not set up at all. There's like no channels or whatever. But yeah, it's at least there. My PC should be set up within 2 weeks. And this was the longest video I've ever made and edited.
So please subscribe!
Furina the X-Hydro Archon, with the best character arc and my favorite Fontaine character by far. One of the very, very few characters who stormed the meta when released, and I'm confident about saying will definitely stay on top. In this video, I'll go over her best teams, her best artifact options, which talents are more or less important, her best weapons covering 5-star weapons to 3-star weapons, her energy recharge requirements, best/most important/most noteworthy constellations, her passive abilities in and out of combat, and how exactly to play her. I will also go over her kit and recommendation changes if she's C6. I'll include both C0 and C6 kit changes in the guide. Firstly, character level. I would recommend leveling her to 90 because she scales heavily off of her HP, which will go up with her level, further increasing the damage she does on her own. Talents. Her main source of personal damage is her skill when in the Osea alignment, and when in her Numa alignment, her skill is basically Kokomi's jellyfish without attacking. For C0 through C5, I'd recommend just staying in the Osea stance. Her burst is her main buff she gives to the rest of the party. I'd recommend leveling her skill to at least 9, and I'd recommend crowning her burst. Her normal attacks can stay at level 1 if she's C0, and at C6, triple crown her. Passives. Her Ascension 2 passive further increases C0-Solitaire's damage based on Furina's current HP. This passive bonus ends at 40k HP, I think. Her Ascension 4 passive is if a character receives healing from another party member that isn't Furina, the whole team will be healed a little. This will give you the ability to sustain your team without the use of a team-wide healer, as long as you're comfortable with staying at around 50% to 65% HP on your whole party. This will be enough to gather the necessary fanfare and fully activate her burst's team buff. Out of combat passive. 30% cooldown decrease when using xenochromatic aberrant abilities. Pretty good for underwater exploration. Weapons. First, I'll cover her weapon choices for C0 through C5. Her just as a stat stick 5-star crit options are Haran, Uraku, and Light of Foliar Incision. There's also Skyward Blade for an energy recharge stat stick. Her better 5-star options would include Jade Cutter, as Jade's HP percent boost passive is very beneficial for her, along with the 44.1% crit rate boost. Then there's Key of Kajni Suit, as Furina can fully activate the key's passive, along with benefiting from the HP percent main stat it offers. Her final and best option would be her own sword, Splendor of Tranquil Waters. 4 stars. Furina's it's okay options would include Sapwood Blade and Sacrificial Sword. Sapwood Blade has a high base attack, which is great for other characters, but not Furina as she scales off of HP. The ER it offers is also as well, since there are just simply better options that give more ER. The passive is also restrictive to needing to use Dendro, and that's if you even bother to activate it. Sacrificial Sword is also not a great option for her, as it's just simply not as good as Favonius in this case. The passive also just doesn't work for Furina like it does for Xingqiu. Moving on to better options. Favonius Sword. Just simply better for her than Sac Sword, since you already need crit rate for her. This will make activating the passive much easier. Next option would be if you're running with an ER Sans or somehow already have enough ER for her. This would be the Dock Hands Assistant. Basically the 4-star version of the key. This gives EM to other party members after activating the passive that Furina can fully do. A very good sword for her even at R1. Next we have my personal favorite, Fleuve Cendre Ferryman. This sword is completely F2P and is acquired from fishing in Fontaine. ER main stat at 45.9% at base level 90, and at R5, which again is free, increases elemental skill crit rate by 16% and further boosts ER by 32% after using a skill, giving you a total 77.9% free energy recharge. As for the Battle Pass or shop options, only Wolffang is good for her. Crit rate main stat, skill and burst damage increase, minor skill and burst crit rate boost that stacks 4 times. Very good. The Blackcliff Longsword is just a crit damage stat stick, the Royal Sword's main stat is attack percent, so no dice, and the Black Sword is for on-fielders. I saved this one for last because I doubt any of you have this sword, but another, if not her best 4-star option for her, would be Festering Desire. This sword was released in 1.2, and even I just barely missed it, as I was just below the adventure rank requirement to participate in the Dragonspine event at the time. This sword has an ER main stat, and increases elemental skill damage by a whopping 32% and skill crit rate by 12%. Perfect for her kit. 3 stars. I guess Skyrider Sword for the ER stat stick, but just don't. Surely you have other options. C6 options. The same, just as a stat stick, crit options still apply, but now some options are better choices for Furina, like Uraku Misugiri. The sword has identical stats as her own sword, and she can partially activate the passive. Light of Foliar Incision is still just a stat stick option. Haran's passive is better than Lifeo's, but using a crit rate sword is not recommended, as you'll be using 4-piece Mahshilsi and her Ascension stat is crit rate, so you'll be at 60.2% crit rate at base, without including crit rate substats from artifacts. This also obviously applies to Jade Cutter. Ki is still a decent option at C6, as her normal attacks scale off HP percent, which Ki provides. Her best choice at C6 would still be her own sword, Splendor of Tranquil Waters. 4 stars. I'd be surprised if any of you have a C6 Furina and somehow don't have at least R1, but I might as well cover this anyway. Dockhand's Assistant, the only HP percent 4-star sword in the game. Great at C0 through C5 and pretty good at C6 for a 4-star. Blackcliff Longsword. This is literally the only other option, and the passive doesn't even work for her at all. It's just a crit damage stat stick. 3-star options. I'm not even going to bother covering this. It's a C6 Furina. You shouldn't have a 3-star sword on her. Artifacts. 4-piece Golden Troop. You could also use 4-piece Tenacity, but I'd recommend 4 Golden Troop over 4 Tenacity tenfold. Maybe have a 4-piece ready for her for showcases when buffing a different party member. 4-piece Noblesse is okay, but I'd keep her on a different set because someone else on the team is likely already running 4-piece Noblesse like any of these characters. There's also 2 pieces that you could mismatch with her too. Any of these would work. But generally, 4-piece Golden Troop is her best option at C0 through C5. Her off-field damage is just way too big to ignore and not capitalize on. At C6, her best 4-piece becomes 4 Mahshilsi. Remember to have no more than 64% crit rate total. Build requirements. She should have at least 70% crit rate and 150% crit damage with at least 25k HP, not including weapon stats. EM isn't super important to her, so try to stay low on EM. Her stat requirements will change at C6. At C6, her crit rate should be at least 50%, and her crit damage should be at least 185%, not including weapon stats. Stat priority at C0 through C5 would be crit rate, then crit damage, then ER, then HP. Stat priority at C6 is crit damage, then crit rate, then HP, then ER. For her Sands, use HP or ER depending on her current ER needs. For her Goblet, HP percent is actually better because her burst buff works the same way Goblet damage percent boosts do, so using an HP percent Goblet is better for more damage when considering diminishing returns. This rule also extends to other characters when Furina is in the party. For her Circlet, crit rate usually for C0 through C5 and crit damage for C6. Her energy recharge requirements change depending on the team composition, the amount of Hydra characters in the party, team resonance, weapon choices for her and other party members, and if you have C4 or not. Single Hydro. Just Furina, at least 180% ER. Since she'll be the only one generating hydro particles, she will need at least 180% ER to keep up with the rotation, preferably 200%. Double Hydro. Running another Hydro drops her ER needs by around 10 to 15%. She can get away with 160, but only if the other character is Xingqiu with Sack Sword or a C1 Yelan because of the double amount of Hydro energy particles. Triple Hydro. A little excessive if this is just to funnel energy into Furina, but this would drop her energy needs significantly. She can drop all the way down to 140% if you're careful with the rotation. Favonius users in the team. For each character on the team with a Favonius weapon, including Furina, you can drop her ER needs by 5% to 10%. This can go further down if you're using a C1 Yelan with her. Electro Resonance. This will further drop her ER needs by about 5 to 10%. C4. This will drop her ER needs by around 10%. Constellations. C1, fanfare increase, which equals more damage increase. C2, faster fanfare accumulation and HP percent boost. C3, burst increase, equaling a bigger damage boost. C4, energy recharge buff, lowering ER needs. C5, skill damage increase. C6, when using her skill, she gains Center of Attention for 10 seconds, which is an unoverridable Hydro Infusion that also comes with a damage boost of 18% of her current max HP. Her normal, charged, and plunging attacks will all have different effects based on her current arc alignment. When aligned with Osea, normal charged and plunging attacks will heal other party members by 4% for 2.9 seconds. Re-triggering will reset the clock. When aligned with Numa, normal charge and plunge attack damage will be further increased by 25% of Furina's current max HP. When any aforementioned attacks hit enemies, the other party member's HP will be drained by 1%. The Center of Attention infusion will only last for 6 attacks after being activated before it ends. Constellation priority: C1, then C3, then C6. Team comps. She's pretty much good in every team that includes Hydro, and I mean literally every team. Vaporize, Freeze, Hydro included Melt, Electrocharged, Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, Mono Hydro, Wet Rock, Sea Breeze, Overvape, Quick Bloom, Soup, Salad, Shatter, Overversion. She fits in all of them without exaggeration. Furina is undoubtedly incredibly versatile. How to play Furina. C0 through C5. Before the entire rotation, with a couple exceptions, this is when you want to use her skill, then burst immediately after. This will give you time to build enough fanfare to fully activate her buff by the time the rotation is over and you're using your on-fielder. You then complete the rotation like normal. Next, you need a source of healing in the team to activate her damage boosting buff. This can be literally any character, except Chevreuse, that heals and fits the type of damage the current team is performing, which includes not only team-wide, but also non-team-wide healers like these. This also includes any character that performs self-healing like these. This will even work with weapons that have healing abilities like these. Note, not including Chevreuse despite her being a healer because her buff only works in teams that only include Pyro plus Electro, and Furina is a Hydro. Her not fully activated damage boosting burst looks like this, and her fully activated damage boosting burst looks like this. C6, this is when you play her on field. You want to burst first, then rotation, then charge attack into skill, and then your preferred attack with her, until you gain her burst again. If you want big numbers on the normal attack, use her Numa stance. And as always, a guide on her teams and a showcase on how to use her. This video took a lot out of me. I literally had to speak French in this video. I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. So please
like and subscribe and comment and share. I'm begging you.
good luck to everyone on their Furina pulls. Let me know what guide you want to see next, and keep it snazzy.